Pay close attention to what you are about to hear, because this is not content designed to distract, entertain, or comfort. It is an invitation to lucidity. Some ideas, when they reach the wrong mind, create confusion. But when they reach the right consciousness, they awaken remembrance. Perhaps that is why, throughout history, certain forms of knowledge were not forcibly forbidden, but veiled through symbols, metaphors, and deliberate silence. Not because they were dangerous, but because not every psychological structure is prepared to sustain them. Many people today carry a quiet discomfort, a feeling difficult to name. It is not ordinary sadness, not clinical anxiety, not simple dissatisfaction with life. It runs deeper, a persistent sense that the world operates at an artificial rhythm, as if you were physically present but internally misaligned, living inside a scenario that does not fully belong to you. Throughout this video, we will explore the possibility, unsettling for some, liberating for others, that this feeling is not a flaw, but a signal. Ancient texts attributed to Thoth, a central figure in the Egyptian Hermetic tradition, speak of cycles of consciousness, of multiple layers of humanity within humanity itself, and of timelines that diverge not through spectacular events, but through inner states. It is important to be clear. There is no historical proof that Thoth existed as a literal individual in the mythological sense. What we have are symbolic records, allegorical texts, and initiatory traditions. Here, Thoth represents an archetype of knowledge, not a historical figure in the modern sense. Our interpretation will be symbolic and philosophical, openly dialoguing with neuroscience, depth psychology, and modern physics, always with transparency. Still, the warning attributed to this ancient consciousness feels strikingly current. Not everyone awakens in the same cycle. Not everyone awakens in the same timeline. And more challenging still, not everyone awakens at all. Not as punishment, superiority, or external choice, but as internal coherence. Consciousness, as we will explore later, is not equally distributed because it is not a reward. It is a responsibility. Before we continue, I invite you to subscribe now, not as a habit, but as a conscious gesture. Each subscription, each comment, each interaction here is more than an algorithmic metric. It is a symbolic choice to participate in a more lucid field of reflection. By supporting this content, you help keep it accessible to others who may be living the same silent questioning you once did, or still do. Throughout this narrative, we will clearly distinguish what is scientifically observable from what is spiritual interpretation. We will explore how the human brain reacts to truths that threaten identity, how the mind creates perceptual filters to preserve stability, and how concepts from quantum physics, often misused, can be responsibly understood to expand our perception of reality without magical thinking or escapism. If at any point you feel resistance, boredom, or an automatic urge to disagree, observe it. Do not fight it. Neuroscience shows us that the brain enters defensive mode when information threatens internal structures. This mechanism is not a flaw, it is survival. But the expansion of consciousness begins when we stop obeying these reflexes blindly. Later on, we will speak about timelines, not as science fiction universes, but as subjective experiences shaped by perception, choice, and internal coherence. We will also address the common mistake of trying to wake others up, and why this often produces the opposite effect. And most importantly, we will speak about you, not as someone special in a superficial mystical sense, but as someone who may be ready to bear the cost of seeing more clearly. If this video reached you, do not assume destiny or coincidence. Consider it a checkpoint, a pause in the automatic flow, an opportunity to ask yourself, with radical honesty, am I living by repetition or by conscious choice? Breathe, adjust your attention, and stay. What comes next does not promise immediate comfort, but offers something rarer: alignment. When we say that not everyone is meant to awaken in this timeline, the modern mind often reacts with immediate resistance. The automatic association is with spiritual elitism, determinism, or fatalism. Yet this reaction reveals more about our cultural conditioning than about the idea itself. We were taught to believe that consciousness is an automatic right, when in fact it behaves more like a capacity that requires internal structure to be sustained. From the perspective of contemporary psychology, especially developmental psychology, we already know that not all individuals operate at the same level of cognitive and emotional complexity. Neuroscience shows that the human brain prioritizes stability, predictability, and energy efficiency. Questioning deep assumptions consumes mental resources and threatens identity. For this reason, the mind creates filters, not to block awakening, but to preserve internal coherence. When ancient Hermetic texts speak of the unawakened, they are not making a moral judgment. They are describing a functional state of consciousness, a state in which the individual operates mainly through repetition, habit, external validation, and fear of disruption. This state is extremely efficient for maintaining social, economic, and cultural systems, and that in itself is not negative. Every civilization needs continuity. The problem arises when continuity is confused with evolution. Later on, we will explore timelines and parallel realities in greater depth, but it is important to introduce a key idea now. Timelines are not places one travels to. They are patterns of experience one accesses. From a classical physics perspective, time is linear. From modern physics perspectives, time is far more flexible than our daily experience suggests. However, we must be responsible here. There is no scientific proof that consciousness literally jumps between parallel universes as depicted in science fiction. What we do have are theoretical models, and above all, psychological evidence that perception of reality changes radically according to the observer's internal state. Practically speaking, this means that two people can live in the same place, in the same historical period, under the same external conditions, and still inhabit entirely different realities. One lives by reaction, the other by observation. One tries to defend against the world, the other tries to understand it. These differences are not subtle. They shape decisions, relationships, opportunities, and even how the body responds to stress. This is where the modern interpretation of Thoth's warning gains strength, not as prophecy, but as diagnosis. There are consciousnesses that simply do not feel the call to question, not because they are incapable, but because, at that moment, there is not enough internal friction to generate rupture. Awakening, contrary to popular belief, does not begin with light, but with friction. It begins when the narrative that sustained life no longer works. You may recognize this in yourself. That moment when old answers stopped relieving. When external achievements no longer brought the promised sense of meaning. When distractions lost their effectiveness. Neuroscience calls this a crisis of meaning. Spirituality calls it a calling. Different languages pointing to the same phenomenon. The mind can no longer pretend coherence where it does not exist. And here something must be said clearly and honestly. Awakening is not better. It is more complex. It does not guarantee happiness, success, or constant peace. On the contrary, it often initiates a period of instability, deep questioning, and symbolic isolation. That is why it is not something everyone should do. It is something that happens when not doing it becomes unsustainable. This is also why trying to force this process on others usually generates resistance, conflict, and distance. Later, we will speak specifically about this common mistake and its consequences. For now, it is enough to understand Consciousness is not transferred through persuasion. It emerges through internal maturation. If something here resonated with you, observe calmly. Do not turn it into identity. Do not think, I have awakened or I am different. These are traps of spiritual ego. Instead, try a simple affirmation, only as an internal exercise, and if you wish, write it in the comments or in a personal notebook, not as a mystical ritual, but as a practice of conscious attention. I choose to observe before I react. This sentence does not change the external world, but it begins to reorganize the internal one. And as we will see later, every shift in experiential timeline begins exactly there. If this content is contributing to your reflection, leave your like and your comment, not as an obligation, but as a sign of presence. Each interaction strengthens a field of dialogue that allows this kind of reflection to continue existing amid so much superficial noise. We continue to deepen this exploration, carefully avoiding the temptation to turn profound ideas into simple slogans. When the concept of timelines is introduced, many immediately imagine parallel universes in a literal sense, as if multiple physical versions of reality were coexisting side by side. This image is popular because it is dramatic and visual, but it is rarely the most useful for self-understanding. In the context we are exploring here, timelines are better understood as trajectories of experience, shaped by how consciousness interprets, reacts to, and internally organizes the same external stimuli. Contemporary science offers important clues in this direction. Neuroscience shows that the brain does not perceive reality directly. It constructs models. Everything you call the world is, in fact, a highly sophisticated simulation generated from sensory signals filtered through memory, emotion, beliefs, and expectations. Two brains exposed to the same event can generate entirely different narratives. This is not abstract philosophy, it is empirical observation. Later, we will speak more about quantum physics, but it is essential to clarify a frequently distorted point. Science does not claim that the mind creates reality in a magical or absolute sense. What it shows is that the observer participates in the observed phenomenon, especially at subatomic scales. When this principle is translated into everyday human experience, what we have is not instant creation of events, but modulation of meaning, attention, and response. Over time, this profoundly alters the course of a life. Here is where awakening begins to take on less romantic and more demanding contours. Awakening is not about seeing things, nor about feeling constantly elevated, nor about escaping human difficulties. Awakening is noticing one's own automatisms. It is clearly seeing how many decisions are made without real presence, how many opinions are inherited, how many fears are conditioned, how many desires are not truly yours. This level of inner observation is not neutral. It comes with a psychological cost. Psychology calls this process disidentification. Spiritual traditions call it detachment. Both are describing the same phenomenon, the gradual loss of fusion between the observer and what is observed. And this loss, though liberating, is deeply destabilizing for most people. This is why ancient traditions suggest that not everyone awakens in the same cycle. They are not saying some are better. They are saying not everyone is willing or prepared to cross this destabilization. For many, a constructed identity, even a limited one, feels safer than the unknown that arises when it begins to dissolve. And this must be respected. A common mistake in modern spiritual discourse is treating awakening as a moral goal, something everyone should pursue. This generates guilt, comparison, and a performative spirituality based on appearance and language rather than real transformation. Later, we will address the dangers of this posture more directly. But it is important to state now, consciousness does not flourish under social pressure. It emerges in inner silence. You may notice that nothing being said here points toward escaping the world. On the contrary, true awakening deepens contact with reality. It makes a person more attentive, more responsible, less reactive. And this helps explain why it is not widely encouraged by systems that depend on predictability and automatic consumption. At this point, consider a practical reflection. Observe your own routine. How many decisions do you make from genuine clarity, and how many from inertia? How many choices are automatic responses to external expectations? This exercise is not meant to generate guilt, but lucidity. Lucidity is the ground of any sustainable transformation. If this content is expanding your perception, consider liking the video and leaving a comment, not as a mechanical gesture, but as a way of signaling that this kind of conversation has space and value. Each interaction helps keep alive a space where science and spirituality can dialogue without crude distortions or disguised dogma. We move forward because there is a crucial point we have not yet explored in depth: the role of comfort, not fear, as the primary mechanism that confines consciousness. We will address that next. Let us move forward to one of the most delicate, and perhaps most counterintuitive, aspects of this entire subject. The idea that the greatest obstacle to awakening is not fear, but comfort. This statement often causes resistance because we are conditioned to associate imprisonment with pain, threat, and repression. Yet when we closely observe the psychological and social mechanisms that maintain stable consciousness, we see that fear is only the surface layer. The true cement of unconsciousness is familiar comfort. From a neuroscience perspective, the human brain is a prediction machine. It prefers what is known over what is true, if truth threatens the sense of control. Even uncomfortable situations, when predictable, are often chosen over broader and more uncertain possibilities. This explains why so many people remain in routines that drain them, relationships that limit them, and worldviews that no longer make sense. The cost of change is perceived as greater than the cost of stagnation. This is where many simplified spiritual narratives fail. They speak of breaking the matrix as if systems were only oppressive and violent. Truly effective systems do not need to oppress. They seduce. They offer symbolic rewards, belonging, validation, identity, constant distraction. In doing so, they drastically reduce the impulse to question. After all, why question something that appears to work? When ancient traditions speak of illusion, they are not saying the world is false. They are saying the dominant interpretation of the world is limited, and this limitation is maintained not by force but by convenience. Questioning requires energy. It requires willingness to pass through periods of uncertainty. It requires tolerating the discomfort of not knowing who one is for a while. For many, this is not desirable, and this is not a moral flaw. It is an adaptive choice. Later, we will speak more directly about the mistake of trying to save or wake up others, but here we can already understand its root. When someone is comfortable within their narrative, any external attempt at rupture is experienced as a threat, regardless of intention. The mind closes, the body reacts, and the relationship deteriorates. Awakening, when it happens, is almost always silent and internal. You may have noticed this in your own experience. Conversations that once felt possible become superficial. Certain interests lose their meaning, not out of arrogance, but out of lack of resonance. This is one of the least discussed side effects of expanded consciousness, a sense of symbolic isolation. Not because you are above others, but because you are operating from different questions. It is important to pause here for an honest observation. If at any moment you thought, "So not everyone will awaken, but I will," observe that thought carefully. It is understandable, but dangerous. It can quickly turn into rigid identity, artificial separation, and a refined spiritual ego. The true sign of conscious maturity is not feeling chosen, but feeling more responsible. Responsible for one's reactions, one's words, the impact of one's presence. The more consciousness, the less need to prove anything. the less urgency to convince, the more attention to inner silence. This is where simple practices come in, often neglected because they seem too basic. Conscious repetition of phrases, for example, does not work as magic, but as neural and emotional training. Words repeated with presence create mental pathways. Mental pathways create response patterns, and response patterns over time shape the experience of reality. For this reason, consider the following not as belief, but as inner experimentation. The affirmations you leave here, in the comments or in your personal notebook, are more than words. They are vibrational codes. When you write, read, and consciously repeat them, you create an energetic circuit that reprograms the mind and anchors this new timeline in your field. That is why, when I invite you to comment, it is not merely for engagement. It is to nourish the collective flow of consciousness. It is an anchoring exercise. Daily repetition transforms vibration into identity. If you wish to seal this understanding now, write, here or for yourself. I consciously choose the frequency that creates my world. Repeat this phrase in the coming days, aloud or silently. Let it become the soundtrack of your vibrational field, because each time you pronounce it, the universe reorganizes its particles around this new coherence. And gradually, everything that does not resonate with it begins to dissolve, naturally, without effort. Do not accept this as absolute truth. Test it. Observe the subtle effects on how you react, decide, and interpret. Science shows that conscious repetition alters neural plasticity. Spiritual traditions suggest that sustained intention reorganizes experience. Different languages describing the same phenomenon from different angles. If this resonated, leave a comment with the phrase or with your own words, not out of obligation, but as practice. As you may already sense, this space is not about accumulating information, but about refining perception. We continue. There is still a crucial misunderstanding we must address: the impulse to carry others along the path, and why it often delays one's own process. There comes a moment on the path of expanded consciousness when an almost inevitable impulse arises: the desire to share, explain, warn, or guide others. It comes from an understandable place. When something profoundly reorganizes your perception of the world, it is natural to want those close to you to see what you now see. Yet this is precisely where many awakening processes begin to clash, not with the external world, but within themselves. Psychology calls this projection. Spiritual traditions call it attachment to outcome. In both cases, we are describing the same internal movement: the attempt to relieve one's own discomfort by changing others. Because it must be said honestly, awakening is not comfortable. It creates asymmetry, a gap between who you were trained to be and who you begin to realize you are. And when this gap appears, sharing it can feel like a way to make it lighter. But there is a paradox here. The more someone tries to wake others up, the more it reveals a remaining need for external validation of their new perspective. Conscious maturity begins when that need diminishes. Not because you withdraw from the world, but because you understand that each consciousness has its own rhythm of opening, its own defense mechanisms, its own temporary limits. Neuroscience offers a clear explanation for this. When information threatens a person's belief system, the brain activates self-preservation circuits. The response is not curiosity, but rejection. Not listening, but defensive rationalization. In this state, no explanation, however logical or well-intentioned, truly penetrates. What penetrates, when it does, is direct experience, and that cannot be delivered through words. This is why, throughout history, initiatory traditions were based on experience rather than open doctrine. Not out of elitism, but out of functionality. Certain states of understanding only emerge when a person is internally prepared to sustain them without fragmentation. Forcing this process does not accelerate awakening. It often interrupts it. You may have lived this yourself. Trying to talk to someone close, explaining something that seemed obvious to you, and encountering irony, indifference, or even hostility. This often generates frustration and sometimes doubt about one's own path. But here is a crucial point. Another person's resistance does not invalidate your experience, just as your clarity does not obligate anyone else to change. Later, we will speak more practically about conscious responsibility, but for now, a simple and profound guideline is enough. The role of one who awakens is not to convince, but to stabilize. To stabilize internally, to become less reactive, more present, more coherent. Coherence is silent, but powerful. It is perceived in how you respond to conflict, how you relate to uncertainty, and how you embody values without announcing them. This kind of presence creates what social psychology calls a modeling effect. People around you do not change because you explained something, but because they feel a difference in the relational field. They may not know how to name it, but they sense it. And when they sense it, they begin to question. Not you, but themselves. This is the only form of awakening that sustains itself. Here, a subtle correction to modern spiritual discourse is necessary. The idea of mission is often misunderstood. A mission is not about carrying others, correcting the world, or pointing out who is asleep. A mission, if we use the word at all, is about embodying a frequency of lucidity in ordinary life, at work, in relationships, in small choices, without spectacle, without superiority. If this path has felt lonely, know that this is not a mistake. It is a phase. Over time, the initial solitude gives way to a different kind of connection, less based on shared identity, more based on genuine presence. Fewer people perhaps, but more authentic relationships. Here is a question worth contemplating in silence. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be conscious? Being right separates. Being conscious integrates, even when it sets boundaries. If you wish, use this phrase as an internal reminder over the next few days, especially when you feel the urge to convince someone or prove something. I trust the timing of consciousness. Repeat it not as belief, but as pause. Often that pause is all that separates lucidity from unnecessary conflict. If this content is helping you refine not only what you think, but how you move through the world, consider leaving your like and your comment. This is not just support for the channel. It is a signal that this kind of mature, integrated, and responsible approach has space and meaning. We now move toward the final part of this journey. It is time to integrate everything that has been said and translate understanding into daily practice. Without excessive mysticism and without oversimplification, this is where the warning becomes a conscious choice. We now arrive at a point of integration, not as a conventional ending, but as a moment where everything that has been said meets what can actually be lived. Because knowledge that does not translate into posture, perception, and daily action remains only as refined narrative. And this space is not about intellectual accumulation, but about the refinement of consciousness. Throughout this journey, it became clear that the warning attributed to Thoth is not about exclusion, privilege, or spiritual hierarchy. It points to something subtler and more demanding: internal coherence. Consciousness does not expand because someone wishes it, consumes content, or repeats concepts. It expands when the old way of perceiving reality can no longer sustain lived experience, when automatism begins to fail, when repetition no longer anesthetizes. Not everyone reaches this point at the same time. Not everyone needs to reach it now. And this is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a natural dynamic of consciousness in motion. The mistake arises when we turn this process into identity, mission, or judgment of others or of ourselves. If there is one essential understanding to carry from here, it is this. The highest timeline is not a future destination. It is a quality of presence available now. It manifests in how you observe before reacting, choose before repeating, and pause before imposing. It does not require withdrawal from the world, but a more lucid relationship with it. From a scientific perspective, this translates into emotional self-regulation, cognitive flexibility, and greater integration between reason and intuition. From a spiritual perspective, it translates into alignment, responsibility, and discernment. Different languages, same direction. Perhaps it is now clearer why not everyone awakens in this cycle, not because they cannot, but because not everyone is willing to bear the cost of lucidity. Lucidity reduces illusion, but it also reduces excuses. It restores power, but it also restores responsibility. And this is not light for every stage of the human journey. Before closing, return once more to something practical, simple, and profoundly transformative. What you write, repeat, and sustain with attention shapes your inner experience. Not through naive mysticism, but through neuroplasticity, focus, and emotional coherence. That is why this invitation is not about engagement, but about conscious practice. If you wish, leave something written, here in the comments or in your personal space, that represents your choice in this moment. It may be this phrase or another that resonates more deeply with you. I choose to live with greater presence, clarity, and responsibility. Allow this sentence not only to be spoken, but observed over the coming days. Notice how it subtly alters small decisions, reactions, and choices. This is how meaningful change happens, without spectacle, without forced rupture, but with quiet consistency. And now, as promised, if this message resonated with you, share it. Help expand this field of consciousness, because each person who awakens illuminates hundreds of others. Leave your comment, your vibration, your testimony, not merely for engagement, but because your energy is part of this collective construction. And remember, the highest timeline is not a place in the future. It is a state of being, available here and now. May you walk in peace, lucidity, and love. Until the next awakening, remain attentive, remain present, and continue forward.